Hey folks, Jonathan here. I wanted to show you a few things on this rear end. Took a little break on the front end here. I'm working on the passenger side A-frame now, but I figured I would tear this thing apart. I pulled it up here last night, and I figured I would tear it down and just do some looking at it and get an idea in my head what we want to do on this. And I went ahead and pulled the rear cover. Everything looks good in it, good and oily. You know, it didn't get a lot of water in it or anything sitting out there. 410 gear, and one right way that you can tell, I want to show people, you can see the 4110. The 41 is the number of teeth on your ring gear. The 10 is the number on your pinion. If you divide 10 into 41, you end up with 4.10, and that's how you get your 410. So, and I'm sure that's the date, 1974. So anyway, I think I've got a set of 538 gears coming for this, or 536 or something in that area. Did a little calculating, and with this gear, let's just say we was turning 6,500 RPM direct drive in, you know, third gear, with the 30-inch tires. We'd be looking at right at 140 mile an hour. If I ran this same setup with the 617 gear, you're looking at 96 miles per hour at 6,500 RPM. We don't plan on turning 6,500, but that's just what I was looking at. But so anyway, we're probably going to swap over 536, 538, something like that. You know, we'll just roll as we go here. Okay, I wanted to tear this down to show everybody what I was meaning about a full floating axle. I know some people probably don't know what it is because they've messed with cars and, you know, small pickup trucks. A lot of the newer 3/4 ton trucks don't have floating axles. They've got semi-floating, but this is considered full floating. And this is it's actually a very, very strong setup, and I'm going to show you some of the advantages to this. There's a lot of disadvantages, but you know, there's definitely advantages, and I'm going to show you how we're going to narrow this thing up and not spend any money whatsoever. We may have to buy axle seals, but that's probably going to be about it. Okay, I went ahead and pulled this side down, and instead of your flange being on the end of your axle and hanging out, your actual flange is on a hub that has got bearings, and you know, you got nuts on the outside that retain it on, and your axle is completely separate. So advantage number one, you break an axle, you don't lose a wheel. Your axles, if it slides out, you know, which is not going to happen, but if it slid out, you wouldn't lose a wheel. It's going to stay there. So there's absolutely no issues there. And I'll show you how the axle comes out. It's a little nasty inside. I think it got some condensation in the tubes, but you know, there's nothing in there for it to hurt, so it wasn't a big deal. But anyway, axle slides completely out, hub stays on. Now I've got the bearings in it, but I've taken the nuts off. There'll be one nut and then a retaining washer which bends over the outside nut to keep the outside nut from coming out, you know, sort of a locking nut. And I knocked the studs out. The drum actually goes on the back side, and the studs come through it and just press right into the hub. As you can see, there's the drum. So we can actually go back and possibly run longer studs, which we may have to buy. I just said we wasn't going to buy anything, but you never know. It depends on the thickness of the rotor. But with the hat on it, you know, which the hat is the depth of the rotor, that's the, you know, the center section. But if we got a, let's just, for instance, a 1-ton slide-on rotor with, you know, with a hat on it, whatever size, you know, distance, we can build our bracket, and we can either use it from here or do it like, you know, a lot of them do, and just weld it to the housing, weld the brackets on. I actually built a Studebaker one time where I done a disc brake conversion on the front, and I actually used the backing plate. I cut it out and used it as a bracket, and that way when you looked up under it, you couldn't even see the calipers. It looked like it was still a drum brake truck, and you know, it hid everything, plus it worked as a dust shield. But this is how they work. They're you know, it's a pretty simple setup. What I plan to do once we get I'm going to try to take it off from here, take this hub off and actually cut it loose, cut my rear, repress it in, and then go ahead and weld it up, get it lined up, instead of taking it loose from here. They're pressed in hard here, they're plug welded in. I've seen people cut them, weld them back together. I don't want to do that. We'll cut everything off and clean it up. But axle wise, what we're going to do, and the reason that number 2 advantage over having a regular axle, regular axle you'll need to get cut and respline, and then you have it heat treated. I could spline them here. I probably don't have the right cutter. I do have a dividing head and a horizontal mill where we could do the splines, but the heat treating we'd have to get done. But what the plan is to cut the axle wherever we need to cut it, and on this end, leaving the splines on the other end. Okay, we'll take this in. Now we could make a new one, but this one's got the tapered locks that go in it, and I'll show you what they look like. These are pretty simple. They're just sort of like a self-centering, and it's a split lock. It goes in. When you tighten it down, it pushes in, keeps your axle from moving or going anywhere. Some don't have that. Some just have a nut that goes on it. But what I can do, and what I've actually done before on big trucks, I actually, like I said, done this on a 20-ton crane before with tandem axles. I will cut this axle wherever it needs cut, and then just bob this off down here, chuck this section up in the lathe, and bore through the center of this hole, and bore it out until it press fits over our axle. Now we'll clean it up, turn it down to a certain size, depending on what it takes to clean it up, and get it good and smooth, and then do a press fit on it. And we'll probably do a good hard press fit where we may have to freeze the axle and heat the outside, and we'll actually put it on and dial indicate it in, get it good and straight, and we can dial indicate, keep this chucked in the lathe and dial indicate it in off of here. And once it's good and straight, I'll slide it back in, everything dry, put the bolts in it, and then we'll come around the outside of it and we'll put a really good weld on it. And we're only going to weld the outside. If you weld the inside, it seems like it tries to pull and you get some warpage. But if we get a really good weld on the outside of that, it won't go anywhere. And like I said, it don't do it. I've never had trouble with big trucks. I don't see as having any problem whatsoever with this one if you get a good tight fit. Something I learned I didn't realize, years back tractor pulling, some of the guys, in the big classes was actually using their axles. They was building a hub and they were press fitting it on, and I don't know how many thousands of press it was, but it was something ungodly, where they was freezing and heating the outer hub and putting it on the axle and not even welding them and putting the wheels on and going. So a good tight press fit would surprise you what it'll hold. But then once you get that weld around it too, it's not going to go anywhere. And we can clean it up and make it look decent. So this is all you'll have, is that sticking out. We've got our centers that fit on here, and then we'll do our offset on our rims. And the rims are in, there's a section in there to where we'll try to get it lined up to where it actually gives us the clearance for our brakes. And we're going to try to stay with the smallest we can. If I have to, I can probably come up with a different style rotor, than an 8-lug, something smaller, and remachine it and do it the same way. This is a pretty big hub. Your disadvantage is going to be your weight. You're always going to have, it's going to take a lot more to turn this. But being a Dana 60, they put Dana 60s in some of the old muscle cars and stuff, so that's not a big issue. There's plenty of them out running on the track. This is the only extras that we're going to have compared to most. But like I said, it's what we lose. I don't think it's going to hurt us. One thing is, like I said, if we break an axle, we don't have to worry about wheels coming off. I don't think we're going to worry about breaking it, because it's going to be pretty darn strong, and you don't have to spend any money, and especially on narrowing it up. But anyway, we'll go to work on this. I got a feeling that we're going to be cutting this weld off and knocking this in, And there's probably going to be, I'm going to pull this off so you can look at it, but there's probably going to be another weld down inside of it, because I think this actual outer piece on the axle presses in, and that's how they do it on big trucks. I'm not familiar with this because of this this mount for the backing plate being around it, but let me pull it apart and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, here's sort of our spindle sticking out, I guess you could call it, on the end of the axle. And I'm not sure, there's no welds inside. I'm used to seeing this pressed in and one weld around it, and then the backing plate would be farther back and welded on. But I'm not sure exactly how this one goes in. I don't think that this and this is one piece. Matter of fact, I'm sure they're not. So once we cut this one loose and get this out of the way, I think we can figure it out. It's probably pressed in and then welded, and then this is slid over. Okay, we got it all torn down, ring and pinions out, ready to clean up, and there's everything in the tote, all the parts, everything. And I want to show you another thing, that it's an advantage, but it's a disadvantage, believe it or not. You know, this thing runs double two bearings instead of having just a single axle bearing out here, and the outer bearings are, you know, in comparison to a regular wheel bearing, even in a 9-inch Ford, it's pretty massive. And that's the outboard, and then of course it's got an inboard that's on the other side, and then a seal. And your grease actually comes in through here from your rear end, and that's what greases the axles. And you know, it's a disadvantage because it's a lot more friction. You know, even bearings, you know, create friction, so you know, you're going to lose from that power wise, but when it comes to strength, you know, you don't have to worry so much. So anyway, and we're just building from what we got. So, you know, I know a lot of people said get a 9-inch and, you know, whatever, and I've got 9 inches. I've actually got one here that I found the other day, but I don't, you know, I just don't want to do that. I want to run what we've got without spending money on axles, and I don't mind the 8-lug setup. I mean, I know we'll lose horsepower, but it's not a big deal to me. And it is putting the weight in a good spot too, right at the back wheels. So, but you know, it should be something that we can put together and not take it out, you know, on the weekend or whatever, and break it and have to come back and work on it again. This should be something that when we get it together, it should hold up, you know, no matter what we do with it, how hard we are on it, what kind of slamming we do with it. So anyway, so we'll get this washed up and cleaned up and get it cut apart here. I'm not sure when I'm going to do that. I'm going to get back on the front end, go ahead and get that knocked out. And I really want to get them frame pieces done so we can get that engine to sit down in. But I'm also going to pick the engine up, we'll pull the oil pan, we're going to check and see what cranks in it, what pistons are in it, and maybe we can tell if anything's been done bottom end wise. Either way, you know, we are going to run it no matter what, but just as well take a look while we have it out anyway. So all right, we're going to get this thing cleaned up, and at least we'll be able to get it into the shop and, you know, get some work done to it. All right. Hey folks, I don't film too many of my tows here, but I'm going to pick up a 58 Ford Custom. That's all I know. But I figured I'd try to videotape it just for the heck of it. And also, I wanted to show you, I've got a magnetic mount. Now, my dash is not magnetic, so it's just sitting here. This was sent to me by Ken and Shay Nelson, Nelson Studios, Blue Smoke Productions. I'm going to see, I don't know if that's two separate YouTube channels or what, but if it is, I'm going to put the links in the description. But as you can see, it's a fully adjustable magnetic mount, which works really good on records and rollbacks. Now this is aluminum bed, but it's got a steel headache bar, so we're gonna try it out and see how it works. I think it's gonna do real good on there. And that ball that makes it fully adjustable, so it won't be like I've been doing, which was just lay the camera down on the bed. And this is gonna work out really good, and I really appreciate it. appreciate you sending it, and we're going to give her a try. Okay folks, I want to go ahead and show you, this is our fuel cell. So aluminum polished, 8-gallon, comes with the foam inside, and it has a sending unit, and this was, got it wrote down here, $75 and some change. That's free shipping, so we're good to go there. 8 gallons should be plenty. And I wanted to show everybody where I was at on the price here. I put the brake parts and with shipping in and the fuel cell, so somewhere around $500 I guess. Let me see, 3, 4, 5, somewhere around $600. We're about $600 in. We're hoping to get out for, I'm hoping about $2,000 total, but we will see. You don't never know. Some of this little stuff adds up. So anyway, worked on the lower A-frame for the right side today. Didn't get much done, had to do some towing. And like I said, we've got the rear end down, ready to clean up and go ahead and knock it out. And we'll keep working at it. Alright, appreciate everybody watching. Till next time, bye.